Well, hey, what's up, everybody? Pastor Matthew here. If you're new to this channel, my name is Matthew, one of the pastors at Gospel Fellowship PCA. We're a Reformed Bible-believing church just north of Pittsburgh. If you're anywhere in the area, please come check us out. Well, I've been doing this YouTube channel for, several years now, quite a few years. And one of the questions that people ask me all the time is, what are the most useful Christian books if I'm trying to build my library? I get questions about that all the time, questions about commentaries, questions about study Bibles, questions about resources. And I've done other videos where I've talked about the basic building blocks of any good study library, both for pastors as well as for laypersons, maybe perhaps elders or deacons or others that are doing just general ministry in the church for the glory of Christ. And so what I thought I'd do today is expand on that basic library a little bit and talk about the most practical Christian books, and we'll put them on a tier system. I've got this little triangle represented here on the screen. The top of the triangle is going to represent the most important study tools that one can acquire. And then towards the bottom, they're still going to be very, very important, but you'll see that there's more tools available on the bottom rungs of the tier chart. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. So glad you're with me today. Let's go ahead and start off. And remember, the question here is not necessarily devotional thoughts. It's not necessarily the book that's inspired me most personally or shaped my own spiritual walk. The question really here has to do with usefulness and practicality in a ministry context, okay? So let's start off here with the obvious number one. At the top of the pyramid has to be the Bible, right? But which Bible? Okay, so obviously it's going to be the Bible. You could do ministry if all you had was the Bible, but you'd want the best Bible that money can buy. And when we're talking about resources, there's going to be nothing to challenge the ESV Study Bible. Now, we're not talking about translations necessarily, though I think that the ESV is an excellent, amazing, wonderful translation, one of the best. If you saw my recent video on the Bible translation tournament, it's one of the top. It's one of the best in the world. Now, we can debate translations all day long. That's not the main point, though, of this video. Remember, we're talking practicality here. And when it comes to practicality, there's nothing that's going to beat the ESV Study Bible. It is a commentary in itself. It has a mini systematic theology in the back. It has a number of incredible articles. It has book introductions. It's got maps. It's got charts. You could conceivably, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't want you to do it, but you could conceivably use this book as your main resource for the rest of your life, okay? This is a great all-in-one resource. If I could only have one book, the old desert island question, or I'm hiking up Mount Everest or whatever, I can take one book. It's got to be the ESV Study Bible. It has all of the scripture text and just so many helpful resources besides. And if you say, I don't think I could do ministry with just a study Bible, I've actually seen it done. When I was in the Ukraine, there was a pastor whose primary tool was a translation of the Reformation Study Bible, which is slightly different from this study Bible right here. But man, he was leading a church, and that's what he had. Okay, so you can do it with very slim resources, but at the top of the pyramid, you're obviously going to want to have the best resource you can. And there's just so much packed into the ESV Study Bible that it's got to be number one. Now, let's go down to that second tier of things that I think are the most practical, helpful resources. And that's going to lead me, number two, to our doctrinal standards, the Westminster Confession of Faith. Now, I feel so bad for you. I really do. I shed a tear for you if you're not in a confessional church. If you just have one of those weak little kind of sloppy internet 10 points of things we believe on your church website, and they're pretty thin and there's no biblical sources and footnotes, man, it is so good to be in a strongly reformed and confessional church. Now, there are confessional churches that aren't reformed. For instance, the Lutherans, they have their set of confessions as well. But I'm so glad to have something as strong as the Westminster Confession of Faith. This, for us, is a very, very useful and helpful book. Not only does it give us our entire framework for doctrine, but we also have our catechisms in there. We have the larger catechism and the shorter catechism beside. So there's so many uses for the Westminster Confession of Faith, looking things up, footnoting, proof texting all of the scriptures, training our children with the catechism, using it in worship. Yes, we do sometimes use portions of the larger catechism or the confession or even the shorter catechism in our worship services. So this is just a multifaceted, very useful, very, very helpful book. And besides that, while we're thinking of corporate worship, we should probably add a hymnal to the mix here. If I had 3 books to lead a church, I could do it. I wouldn't want to, but I could do it with a Bible, the Westminster Confession of Faith, and a good, solid hymnal. And the Trinity Hymnal is a great hymnal. Now, there are other hymnals too. There's the Trinity Hymnal Psalter. There's the Psalms for worship, Psalms for singing. If you're a psalm singing congregation, there's lots of good worship tools. But singing is such a part of the Christian life that I would hate to even try to live without song. And again, we use this corporately. We use this in our family from time to time. Individually, we sing it. And the Trinity Hymnal is great because it has confessional documents in the back. It has many, many of the best hymns, and also it has many, many psalms besides. So with this 3 set of books right here, I'm feeling pretty confident about my ability to lead a church. Now, again, I wish I had a huge library, and I'm surrounded by books, so I'm a book lover, but we're talking about the most important and practical, helpful, useful books, and we're putting them on a tier chart here. So let's go down to the 3rd tier, okay? These would be the books that we need. Still love them, but we're building what we've got here. And for me, that's going to be the Greek New Testament next. Now, maybe I could have taken that a little bit up higher, but it is just the New Testament. But for me, I can't really live and move and have my being without a Greek New Testament. It's just become such a part of my devotional life. I wake up practically every morning and read out of the Greek. Now, as it happens, I'm a little bit on a pause because I just finished up reading the book of Revelation again in my Greek majority text. This here pictured is a critical text. I'm actually a majority text person, but that notwithstanding, I think most ministers need to have a Greek text. Now, if you don't read Greek or you don't study the biblical languages at all, just put that aside and replace it with something else on this tier chart here. But for me, I've got to have my Greek text. I just use it too much, and I really wouldn't want to live without it. After that, let's talk about our first devotional entry here. And for me, I'm talking practical usage, and I need devotional help in my life. And so I'm going to turn at this point to Charles Spurgeon's morning and evening devotion. It is great. We use it in my family for family worship all the time. Not exclusively, but we use it all the time. In fact, if you have morning and evening, one of the things that you know is it's got a morning devotion and an evening devotion. So if you only use it once a day, you can choose. And that's what we do at our family. We have family devotions in the evening after dinner. And so what I do is I pick somebody in the family and I read the scripture verses in the headings at the top of the morning and the evening, and I let my kids or my wife pick, and then we read that particular devotion. And Spurgeon has never, ever let me down. If I only had one devotional work just for the purposes of my heart or for family worship, morning and evening would certainly be that devotion. I highly commend it to you. And by the way, while I'm talking about this, I'm going to put a link in the description of this video to Amazon where you can get every single one of these resources. If you don't like Amazon, I get it. That's cool. But I'll at least put them out there so you can find the ISBN numbers and you can look up the very books that I'm talking about here. I really think you need to get morning and evening for your devotional life. And that's going to lead me next to a commentary. We're going to need to have a commentary in this tier chart here. And why not have Matthew Henry's commentary on the whole Bible? Okay, now you can get this online. In fact, it's in a lot of places. CCEL is one such website, and I'm sure there's other places as well. I think the Net Bible has it as one of its running commentaries online as well. Matthew Henry's commentary is in the public domain, and so a lot of different websites have it. A lot of search sites have it. Probably Bible Gateway has it as well. I like to have things in physical copy, though, and this is one of those that I actually don't have in physical copy that I need to get, but I consult it all the time. Matthew Henry is a solid Reformed Presbyterian. That's right, as am I, so I'm going to love his theology notes. I will tell you this, if you get the abridged version of Matthew Henry, there was some, this is a true story, some Arminian editors that really culled out his Calvinistic, heavy Calvinistic leanings in his commentary, really reduced it and truncated it in size. So if you're not Calvinistic or Reformed, you might want to lean into the abridged version. Of course, I don't recommend that. I would say get the real stuff, get the unmixed, the undiluted, unadulterated Matthew Henry, see what he really believed, and read his whole stuff in his fuller Bible commentary. Still one of the best and most helpful. It's devotional, it's thoughtful, it's provocative, it's rich, it's deep into the text of Scripture itself. You really can't improve on Matthew Henry. Now, some people will say, hey, you got to get a modern commentary. You got to get the Word Biblical Commentary or the Pillar Commentary set or the New International Critical Greek Testament Commentary. There's so many good commentaries out there. And trust me, there's a place for those. I didn't put them on this tier, though, but I did put Matthew Henry because he's stalwart, trusty, and reliable. Let's go down to the next tier here. Here, we're going to have to start putting in some systematic theologies. Okay, we've got to have a systematic theology, probably several in our top tier chart here. And so what can you do better than John Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion? For Protestants, and especially the Reformed, man, this is it. This is the standard. This is the one. And there are multiple editions of John Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion. Banner of Truth just put out one of the earlier editions in a new printing and binding. It's very beautiful. So it's slightly reduced in scope from the final 1559 edition. But I like this one right here. And this is the translation of Beveridge. There are other translations as well. Of course, he originally wrote in French and in Latin, but you're going to need an English one. I suggest this one right here that's pictured. And again, I'll link it below. But man, if you're Reformed, if you're Presbyterian, or if you're just a serious Protestant scholar, just looking into the truths of the word of the Lord, you have to read through John Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion at least once in your life. It's just unavoidable. You have to have it. Next, let's do something a little bit more modern as far as a systematic theology goes. And here I'm going to recommend Louis Berkhof. Now, Berkhof is something of a distillation of Bavinck, many people say, and I think that's probably true. But if you want a readable, very easy to look up modern language systematic theology in one volume, okay, there's multiple volume sets, but if you want it in one volume, Louis Berkhof is just great. In every single doctrine, he gives you the main formulation. He gives you a little bit about what the Lutherans and the Calvinists and the Arminians believe, and then he sets them all straight and gives the right Calvinistic interpretation on that. I'm having fun here, of course. But Louis Berkhof is a great one-volume systematic. Some people will say Wayne Grudem, okay? I read Wayne Grudem when I was in college to great benefit of my soul, and I still look up things in Wayne Grudem from time to time, but I think you got to go a little bit deeper and a little bit richer than Wayne Grudem. As much as I like his thing, his short systematic there, there's some weirdness to Grudem. Of course, I'm not a charismatic and he's a charismatic. And there's some other things too that I'm not so sure about Wayne Grudem. But Louis Berkhof is solid, reliable, and dependable. Even if you're not Presbyterian, you're still going to benefit a lot from Louis Berkhof's one-volume systematic theology. Next, a blank notebook. At this point, I have to put in a blank notebook. Now, maybe that surprises you, but I use blank notebooks so much that I just can't imagine my life without them. I've got my miscellaneous systems. I've got my notebooks. I've got my little notes on scripture books that I carry around. I'm just taking notes all the time. And as much as I think about how helpful these other books are, sometimes I got to start putting thoughts down on paper, my own thoughts. And so I'm going to recommend here a Moleskine journal or something cheaper. You get whatever you want. Go to Walmart, go to Target, don't go to Target, get it wherever. Make your own notebook then. If you don't want to go to Target, that's fine. But you're going to need some blank notebooks. I can't live without them. And that brings me next to another set of commentaries. And we're going back to John Calvin here. Calvin makes it twice on this fourth rung of the tier chart here. His commentaries are amazing. They're really amazing. Some of you have a really bad impression of John Calvin, and you need to get over it. You just have to get over it. You're like, he burned Servetus at the stake. Well, okay, that's only part of the story. Calvin was an expert witness at the trial. He did not personally burn Servetus at the stake. I could get off on a side trail here. He witnessed to Servetus so many times, wrote him letters, counseled him. Look, the story's long, but if you think Calvin's a bad guy, man, you need to get over it. You need to get into his Bible commentaries because there's still some of the best stuff. He's really devotional. He's extremely pastoral, more pastoral than you've ever given him credit for. You think of him as this ivory tower theologian who just thought about predestination all day long. Man, that is such a jacked up stereotype of Calvin. His commentaries are truly beautiful, very helpful. He's got them on almost every book of the Bible except for Revelation and maybe one or two others, if I'm not mistaken. But man, it's rich, deep, profound, and you will always benefit from John Calvin when you get into his commentaries. I do have them in physical form right there, though I sometimes consult them online as well. Last tier, okay? So this is the stuff that I really love it and I want it. Don't necessarily need it, but I love it. And here for the first time, we see some Jonathan Edwards. Now, I put up the religious affections here because the cover's pretty on this volume. If you look up the Yale editions, it's nothing but a black cover with a nice little stripe on the binding. And I chose religious affections just almost arbitrarily because I benefit from everything Jonathan Edwards ever wrote. I love religious affections, not so much freedom of the will, but I love his volumes on the revival. That'd be volume 4 of the official Yale editions. I love his personal writings. I love his treatises, his sermons, his miscellanies, his journals. I benefit from everything. So this here is just representative of Jonathan Edwards. And I'm so glad that Yale has everything for free online on the Yale Edwards site. So it's edwards.yale.edu. It's the very site that we're using all the time for the Jonathan Edwards Study Bible, which we're making right now with Thomas Nelson. Can't wait for that to come out. Every note that we have in the Jonathan Edwards Study Bible, when it comes out with Thomas Nelson, is going to directly link you to the edwards.yale.edu official works of Jonathan Edwards, and the page correlation is exact to the hardback editions or the paperback editions if you have the Yale official works of Edwards. So it's going to be an awesome tool. I guess I'm talking more about the study Bible than I am Edwards himself. But for those who are interested in learning about Edwards, it's going to be a great way to dip your toe into the pool, because any note you see in the bottom of our study Bible, you can immediately look it up in the official works and find out the context for more of what Edwards says. Okay, so I got to get Edwards on my tier chart. After that, St. Augustine's Confessions is great. Now, St. Augustine, ton of great stuff, letters, sermons, major treatises, but the Confessions is a book that I read over and over again. I really just love it. It's his personal spiritual autobiography of his conversion. And to me, it's just gold. It's made out of gold. He's so honest. He confesses his sins. He writes the whole thing as a prayer to the Lord. He's got some really interesting thoughts on his temptations with lust and fornication. He also has some really interesting thoughts on time and the relationship between the past, the present, and the future. Gets into some really interesting stuff. And of course, his wonderful story about his son, Adeodatus, and his mother, Monica. Just a great story of conversion and Lord's work in Augustine's life. Get it really cheap on Kindle, or get yourself a paperback edition of it or hardback. St. Augustine's Confessions is awesome. Speaking of awesome, Thomas Watson's A Body of Divinity is so great. Oh my goodness. If I wasn't an Edwards scholar, I would seriously consider jumping over and being a Thomas Watson scholar. Every sentence, every paragraph Thomas Watson writes is amazing. If you like Spurgeon because he's so quotable, you know how Spurgeon, everything he says is like a quote. You just want to take it and put it on a shirt. Thomas Watson's the same way. Now, this work right here, A Body of Divinity, he's actually working through the Westminster Shorter Catechism, and he takes the questions and he turns them into sermons, and he takes the sermons and turns them into chapters. So that's what you have here. But he's also got a great book on the 10 Commandments, and he's also got another one on the Lord's Prayer. I want to collect them all. I have 2 out of the 3, and I've heard that some works, official works of Thomas Watson, are coming out pretty soon, so I definitely want to get those. Of the ones I mentioned, A Body of Divinity is as good as it gets. Every paragraph is pure gold. Again, you're going to love Thomas Watson. Now, you're probably saying, I don't have any fiction on this chart at all. Well, that's because I'm talking about practical Christian resources, as I've been stressing here. But let me throw in one. And when I throw in one, let me throw in a bunch, because I'm going to do the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Is there any practical ministry value to this series? Yes, there is, especially if you're writing sermons or you're using them for didactic purposes, because there's so many illustrations. Basically what this is, they're children's stories, right? Yeah, kind of. But it's a collection of sermon illustrations on deep, profound theological points. Who can forget when Eustace is trying to tear off the dragon skin? Who can forget Aslan as he dies as a redemption for Edmund? I mean, my goodness, there's just so many useful nuggets here in the Chronicles of Narnia. And not only that, but they're entertaining. It's great family reading. Read them together on the couch in the evening. Read them together on the porch swing on summer nights. Chronicles of Narnia is awesome. Let's go next to John Frame. John Frame's History of Western Philosophy and Theology is a great book. Notice there's nothing yet in this set, and I've only got 1 or 2 more here, on philosophy, I wish we could throw in all the works of Plato and Aristotle, but they're not quite as practical for ministry purposes, and that's really what this video is about. So I'm going to throw in here, as a summary of all of philosophy, Frame's History of Western Philosophy and Theology. I've said in other places that I think Frame is one of the best theologians alive. I'm not backing down from that claim. I think he's excellent and amazing. Check out John Frame. His systematic theology could easily be on this chart, but just for the sake of keeping it down to one, I'm going to put this one, A History of Western Philosophy and Theology. And that's going to bring me last to perhaps a surprising one, but a book that I've used many, many, many times. When I graduated from high school, and I was going to go on to Bible college to get my first degree, somebody gave me this right here as a gift, the Holman Illustrated Bible Dictionary, and I still use it all the time. Now, you could look up things on Wikipedia, but I still like physical form books. And so if I just want a reminder, who was Nebuchadnezzar? Where was Assyria again? How many different Ananiases are there in the Bible? Those kind of questions. I just look it up in my Bible Illustrated Dictionary. If you're a Sunday school teacher, that's a great resource. If you're a pastor and you just want to check out, once again, what the temple looked like on the inside, this is the kind of stuff you're going to get in the Holman Illustrated Bible Dictionary. All right, so there we are. There's my tier chart. I would love to hear some feedback on this video. If you think I got it wrong, please, by all means, correct me in the comments. You always do anyways. I do love you very much. Thank you so much for checking into this particular video. I will, of course, chat with you later. Thanks. Love you. Bye.